The Last Ambassador. The Final Hearing. Ambassador Elena Vasquez straightened her formal diplomatic uniform as the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum. The chamber stretched before her like a metallic cathedral, its curved walls rising hundreds of meters into shadows. Representatives from 47 different species sat in concentric circles around a central platform, where she would make humanity's final plea for membership in the Galactic Confederation. Elena had prepared for this moment for 3 years. She carried with her humanity's greatest achievements, their technological innovations, their cultural contributions, and their desperate hope for acceptance among the stars. What she didn't carry was any illusion about how this hearing would end. The Nexus station orbited a neutron star at the galaxy's edge, chosen specifically because its hostile environment demonstrated the Confederation's technological superiority. For most species, simply surviving here required advanced technology that took millennia to develop. Humans had arrived in ships they'd built in just 50 years since first contact. The Council of Judges. Chancellor Vorthak of the Hegemony raised his crystalline head as Elena approached the central podium. His species had ruled the galactic core for 12,000 years, and his contempt for younger civilizations radiated through his telepathic field like heat from a forge. Human Elena Vasquez. Vorthak's voice resonated through implanted translators in every chamber occupant's mind. You appear before this council for the final time. Your species has been observed for 2 centuries. We have reached our conclusion. Elena noticed how none of the other species' representatives looked directly at her. The Zephyrians, with their gossamer wings and ethereal beauty, whispered among themselves in harmonious tones. The mechanical Nexari processed data streams through their quantum neural networks. The ancient Drachmori, barely keeping their warrior instincts in check, drummed clawed fingers against their bench in rhythmic patterns that spoke of barely contained violence. They had all made their decision long before she arrived. The litany of failures. Your species, Vorthak continued, exhibits the standard patterns of primitive aggression that we have observed in over 300 failed civilizations. You wage war against your own kind. You poison your homeworld. You expand without wisdom, consume without thought, and reproduce without control. Elena had heard these accusations before. Every diplomatic mission for the past 50 years had ended with the same list of humanity's supposed failures. She no longer bothered to argue that most of these issues were already being addressed, that human society had evolved rapidly since first contact, that they had ended most conflicts and begun healing their world. The Council didn't care about human progress. They cared about human potential, and that potential terrified them. Furthermore, added Counselor Xyria of the Ethereal Collective, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, your species shows disturbing signs of adaptive capability. In 2 centuries, you have developed technology that took our civilization's millennia to achieve. This rapid advancement is unprecedented. There it was, the real reason for humanity's rejection. Not their failures, but their successes. The ultimatum. Elena remained silent as Vorthak rose from his seat. The Chancellor's crystalline form caught the chamber's bioluminescent lighting and scattered it in prismatic patterns across the walls. The Galactic Confederation hereby rejects humanity's application for membership. Your species is deemed unfit for integration into civilized galactic society. A pause. Elena could feel the weight of 47 different species watching her reaction. However, Vorthak continued, we are not without mercy. Humanity will be granted 30 standard days to submit to Confederation oversight. You will dismantle your military forces, surrender all weapon technologies, and accept guidance from appointed Confederation administrators. Your expansion beyond your home system will cease immediately. Elena's hands remained steady as she activated her recording device. Every word would be transmitted back to Earth and the hundreds of human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. And if we refuse, she asked, though she already knew the answer, then your species will be pacified, rumbled General Thane of the Drachmori Empire. We have brought peace to thousands of worlds through the simple expedient of removing those who disturb it. The silent response. Elena looked around the chamber one final time. She memorized the faces, the expressions of superiority and dismissal. These beings who had never known true struggle, who had inherited their technology from those who came before, who had grown soft in their certainty of supremacy. "I understand," she said simply. "Humanity's response will be delivered within the specified time frame." What she didn't say was that humanity's response had already been prepared. The moment the Confederation's intentions became clear years ago, a different kind of diplomacy had begun. Elena left the chamber without ceremony. Behind her, the representatives began discussing how to divide humanity's colonial territories among themselves, how to best exploit the resources humans had discovered, which planets would make suitable administrative centers for the coming occupation. They spoke as if it were already accomplished. The withdrawal. Within hours of Elena's departure from Nexus Station, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. Every human diplomatic mission, trade delegation, and cultural exchange program simply vanished. Not in panic or hasty retreat, but in coordinated, simultaneous withdrawal that left no trace behind. Human colonies ceased all external communications. Trade routes that had been established with a dozen species went silent. The bustling spaceports where human merchants had become common sights emptied overnight, leaving behind only confused alien dockworkers and half-finished transactions. Captain Zeth of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium tried to contact New Geneva, a human agricultural world that supplied exotic foods to half the sector. His messages went unanswered. Automated systems that had always responded to shipping inquiries returned only silence. "They're probably just scared," he told his crew, retreating to their homeworld to make their decision. But something about the silence felt different. It wasn't the silence of fear or confusion. It was the silence of preparation. The missing pieces. Dr. Xenfor of the Nexari Collective had spent decades studying human technological development. As a synthetic being with processing power that exceeded most organic civilizations' combined intellectual capacity, she had been tasked with understanding humanity's rapid advancement. Now, reviewing her data in the aftermath of the Council's decision, she began to notice disturbing gaps in her knowledge. Human development had indeed been remarkably rapid, but the trajectory wasn't quite what it appeared. The technologies they shared with other species, the innovations they demonstrated at trade shows and diplomatic meetings, were impressive but not revolutionary. Clever adaptations of existing principles, efficient combinations of known techniques. But energy consumption data from human colonies told a different story. They were using far more power than their visible infrastructure could account for. Deep space surveys showed materials being shipped to locations that weren't on any human colony register. And most troubling of all, there were temporal distortions around several human systems that suggested experiments with space-time manipulation. The humans hadn't just been building what others could see. They had been building in secret. The first warning. Commander Thex of the Drakmoride 4th Fleet received the order to investigate the human colony of New Shanghai 3 days after the universal silence began. The colony orbited a resource-rich system that the Drakmori had been eyeing for expansion. With humans out of the picture, it would make an excellent forward base. New Shanghai had always been a modest settlement. 50,000 colonists, standard terraforming equipment, a small defensive satellite network that looked impressive but wouldn't last 5 minutes against a proper military assault. Intelligence suggested the humans had been mining rare earth elements and conducting agricultural experiments. Commander Thex approached with a single destroyer and 2 escort frigates, more than enough to handle any resistance from panicked colonists. The system looked exactly as expected. The planet hung in space, its cities glowing with normal lighting patterns. Ships moved in standard orbital traffic patterns. Everything appeared completely normal. "Open a communication channel," Thex ordered. Silence. "Are their communication systems functional?" he asked his signals officer. "All equipment appears operational, Commander." They're receiving our transmissions but not responding. Thex found this mildly annoying but not surprising. Take us into orbit. Prepare landing parties. We'll simply inform them that this system now falls under Confederation protection. The destroyer moved into high orbit without incident. Scanning systems showed normal life signs throughout the colony. Humans going about their daily activities as if nothing had changed. But as Thex studied the readings more carefully, something seemed wrong. The patterns were too regular, too predictable. And when he looked at the timestamp on the sensor data, he realized he was seeing the exact same activity patterns repeating every 6 hours. "Commander," his science officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. The readings don't match any known human technology." The vanishing. At exactly 1400 hours, ship time, Commander Thex and his fleet simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not damaged. They didn't explode or break apart or send distress signals. One moment they were conducting standard orbital maneuvers around New Shanghai, and the next moment the space they had occupied was empty. The automated beacon that every Drakmori ship carried continued transmitting for exactly 37 minutes after the ships vanished, sending normal status updates as if everything was perfectly fine. Then it too fell silent. On the planet below, New Shanghai continued its eerily regular patterns of activity, but deep beneath the colony's surface, in facilities that had never appeared on any survey or intelligence report, new data was being processed and cataloged. The silent protocol had claimed its first victory. The reckoning. The search begins. The disappearance of Commander Thex's fleet sent shockwaves through the Drakmori military command. 3 warships and over 1,000 personnel simply vanishing without a trace violated every known law of physics and warfare. Ships didn't just disappear, especially not Drakmori ships built with the finest military technology in the galaxy. General Krex, Supreme Commander of Drakmori forces, stared at the empty tactical display where Thex's fleet should have been reporting. The automated distress beacon's final transmission played on repeat. All systems normal. Beginning atmospheric entry procedures. Will report upon landing. 37 minutes later, nothing. Send the 3rd battle group, Krex ordered his aide. Full strength. I want to know what happened to my ships. What arrived at New Shanghai 2 days later was not a small patrol, but a massive military formation. 12 destroyers, 4 heavy cruisers, 2 dreadnoughts, and a command carrier with a crew of 15,000. Enough firepower to level a planet. They found the same scene that had greeted Thex, a peaceful human colony going about its daily business in suspiciously repetitive patterns. No sign of the missing fleet. No debris, no wreckage, no indication that a battle had ever taken place. Admiral Vex, commanding the battle group from her flagship, was a veteran of 40 campaigns against rebellious systems. She had seen every form of resistance, deception, and desperation that species could devise when facing Drakmori might. But she had never seen anything like this. "Begin deep scans of the entire system," she commanded. "Every asteroid, every piece of space dust. Those ships are somewhere." The pattern emerges. While the Drakmori searched fruitlessly for their missing fleet, similar incidents began occurring across the galaxy. A Zephyrian exploration vessel investigating the Human Research Station at Kepler 438 bits sent one routine transmission, then vanished. A Nexary data collection probe approaching the human industrial complex at Wolf 359 simply stopped existing mid-transmission. But the most disturbing incident occurred when Chancellor Vorthek himself dispatched his personal guard to secure the human diplomatic compound on Nexus Station. 12 of the hegemony's elite warriors, equipped with the finest weapons and armor their ancient civilization could provide, entered the compound to find it completely empty. Not abandoned, empty, as if humans had never been there at all. The compound's rooms were perfectly clean and organized, but they contained no personal belongings, no equipment, no signs of habitation. When the guards accessed the compound's security systems, they found months of recordings showing normal human activity up until the moment Elena Vasquez left for her final council hearing. After that, the recordings showed empty rooms, as if the humans had simply faded from existence. But the strangest part was what they found in the compound's basement. A room that hadn't appeared on any architectural plan contained sophisticated equipment that none of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could identify. And on the wall, written in perfect hegemony script, was a simple message: "We tried to do this the easy way." The investigation. Dr. Xenfor found herself appointed to lead a joint investigation into the human disappearances. Her artificial consciousness could process data at rates that biological minds couldn't match, and she had more experience with human technology than any other being in the Confederation. What she discovered challenged everything she thought she knew about humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. The energy signatures left behind at each disappearance site were unlike anything in the Confederation's vast databases. They suggested manipulation of space-time at the quantum level, but with a precision and scale that should have been impossible for any civilization to achieve. The technology required wouldn't just be advanced. It would represent a complete paradigm shift in understanding the fundamental nature of reality. The humans weren't just hiding their military capabilities. Xenfor reported to the emergency session of the Galactic Council. They were hiding their entire technological foundation. Everything we observed was deliberately designed to make us underestimate them. Chancellor Vorthak's crystalline form flickered with agitation. "You're suggesting that a species we've observed for 2 centuries has technology superior to civilizations that are millennia old." "I'm suggesting that we never observed their real technology at all," Xenfor replied. "What we saw was an elaborate deception designed to make us believe they were primitive. The truth is, we may have been the primitive ones all along." The revelation. The answer to humanity's disappearance came from an unexpected source. Captain Zeth of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium had been one of the few aliens to develop genuine friendships with humans over the years. Unlike most of his species, who saw humans as useful but inferior trading partners, Zeth had come to respect their ingenuity and determination. When human colonies went silent, Zeth didn't report to military authorities or follow official investigation protocols. Instead, he flew his small merchant vessel to Proxima Centauri, where he had often visited a human engineer named Maria Santos who had helped him upgrade his ship's engines. He found New Proxima exactly like the other colonies, apparently normal but eerily repetitive in its patterns. But Zeth knew Maria well enough to recognize that the figure he saw through her workshop window wasn't really her. The movements were too precise, too regular. Maria never worked with such mechanical efficiency. So instead of landing at the main spaceport, Zeth set his ship down in the wilderness outside the colony and walked to Maria's workshop on foot. When he arrived, he found it empty except for a holographic projection system displaying a pre-recorded loop of Maria at work. But Maria herself was waiting for him in her real workshop, 50 meters underground. "I wondered if you'd figure it out," she said, embracing her old friend. "You always were more observant than most." "Where is everyone?" Zeth asked, looking around at the sophisticated equipment that filled the underground facility. Nothing here resembled the simple tools Maria had used in her surface workshop. "Safe," Maria replied. "And working. We've been preparing for this day since first contact, Zeth. We knew it would come eventually." The silent protocol explained. Maria led Zeth through corridors that extended far deeper than should have been possible. The underground complex was vast, filled with technology that made the Confederation's most advanced installations look primitive by comparison. "We call it the Silent Protocol," Maria explained as they walked. "Every human colony, every settlement, every outpost has been building duplicate facilities underground. When the Confederation rejected us, we activated the protocol. Everyone moved to the real colonies and left holographic projections running on the surface." Zeth stared at manufacturing facilities that seemed to bend space around themselves, energy generators that drew power from dimensions he couldn't comprehend, and quantum computers that processed information at speeds that defied physical laws. "How long have you had this technology?" he asked. "Since about 50 years after first contact," Maria admitted. "We realized pretty quickly that the Confederation wasn't interested in equals. They wanted subjects. So we gave them what they expected to see while we built what we actually needed." They reached an observation deck that looked out over a vast hangar bay. Ships unlike anything in the galaxy's databases hung in gravitational cradles, their hulls seeming to phase in and out of visible reality. Some appeared to be larger inside than outside. Others seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. "The ships that disappeared," Zeth said. "What happened to them?" Maria's expression grew sad. "We removed them from this reality. The crews are safe, held in temporal stasis until we can figure out what to do with them. We don't want to hurt anyone, Zeth, but we won't be enslaved either." The counter-strike, the revelation of humanity's true capabilities, reached the Galactic Council just as they were finalizing plans for the full-scale invasion of Earth. 50,000 ships from a dozen different species were gathering at staging points throughout the galaxy, preparing to teach humanity a lesson about defying their betters. Chancellor Vorthak was reviewing the final attack plans when the first reports arrived. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace at key strategic points throughout Confederation territory. Not the crude vessels that had been observed for centuries, but sleek, impossible craft that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. The human fleet wasn't attacking. They were simply appearing, positioning themselves at critical infrastructure points, and waiting. At the hegemony's primary shipyards, a single human vessel materialized directly inside the defensive perimeter without triggering any alarms. It hung motionless above the massive construction facilities where the galaxy's most powerful warships were built, its presence a clear message that humanity could go anywhere they chose. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human ships appeared at mining operations, communication relays, trade hubs, and military bases. Always just one ship, always completely non-threatening in posture, but always in a position where they could cause catastrophic damage if they chose. The new reality. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with a very different tone than previous meetings. Chancellor Vorthak's crystalline form had lost its usual prismatic brilliance, dulled by stress and the recognition of a completely transformed galactic balance of power. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared on the chamber's central platform, not as a supplicant seeking acceptance, but as a representative of what was clearly the galaxy's most advanced civilization. "The Confederation spent 2 centuries evaluating humanity," she began, her voice calm and measured. "You found us wanting. You declared us unfit for membership. You threatened us with pacification if we didn't submit to your authority." The chamber was silent. 47 species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia waited to hear their fate from a representative of the species they had dismissed as primitive. "Humanity has no desire for conquest or domination," Elena continued. "We never wanted to rule over others. We just wanted to be left alone to develop in peace. But since that apparently isn't possible, we're going to establish some new rules for galactic coexistence." She activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of human ships throughout Confederation space. First, the pacification program ends immediately. Any species currently under Confederation protection will be given the choice of genuine independence or continued association under voluntary terms. Chancellor Vorthak found his voice. "You can't simply dissolve structures that have maintained galactic peace for millennia." "Peace." Elena's tone remained polite, but her eyes were steel. "You mean the peace of the conquered, the peace of species too intimidated to resist your expansion." "That wasn't peace, Chancellor. That was imperial control disguised with pretty words." The terms. Elena outlined humanity's new framework for galactic civilization. The Confederation could continue to exist, but as a voluntary association of equals rather than a hierarchical empire. Species would be free to leave or join as they chose. Military actions against member worlds would require unanimous consent. And most importantly, no species would ever again be threatened with pacification for refusing to submit to outside authority. And if we refuse these terms, asked General Krex of the Drakmori. Alina's expression didn't change. Then you'll learn what pacification really looks like. But it won't be imposed by us. You'll do it to yourselves, as your civilization collapses under the weight of trying to maintain an empire without the infrastructure to support it. She gestured to the holographic display. Every critical system in Confederation space is now under human observation. Your shipyards, your communication networks, your trade routes, your military installations. We're not threatening to destroy them. We're simply making it clear that we could, if necessary. The chamber erupted in angry voices from species unaccustomed to being dictated to. But the anger was tempered by fear, and the fear was justified. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that none of them could match or even understand. The choice. Elena waited for the commotion to die down before continuing. We're offering you the same choice you offered us. Submit to new terms for galactic coexistence, or face the consequences of continued aggression. The difference is that our terms don't require you to surrender your independence or submit to outside control. We're asking you to accept a galaxy where might doesn't make right. Chancellor Vorthak's ancient mind struggled to process this reversal of fortune. His species had ruled through superior technology and the threat of force for 12,000 years. The idea of negotiating as equals with younger civilizations was almost incomprehensible. You're asking us to abandon everything our civilizations have built, he said. We're asking you to build something better, Elena replied. Something based on cooperation rather than domination. Something that doesn't require the threat of extinction to maintain order. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had dismissed humanity as primitive just days before. The silent protocol isn't just about military technology. It's about a different approach to civilization itself. We spent 2 centuries learning from your mistakes while you weren't watching. Now we're offering to share what we've learned. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. Not because every species embraced humanity's vision of galactic cooperation, but because the alternative was the collapse of everything they had built over millennia. As Elena left the chamber for the final time, she reflected on the irony of the situation. Humanity had sought acceptance among the stars and been rejected as unworthy. Now they found themselves the reluctant guardians of galactic civilization, responsible for species that had never learned to see beyond their own superiority. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps, Elena thought, that was exactly what it needed.